Okay, we are live now. So welcome everybody, council and staff, and welcome to any public that's watching tonight. First of all, before we start this meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territories of the Subosset First Nation. Probably like to remind staff one more time and council that we are live streaming our meeting on our YouTube Lake Cowichan YouTube channel, and ask all participants to ensure your faces are visible on the screen. But I think we've all got that down pat now. I'd also like to remind everyone that please unmute their microphones before speaking. For the public, we have two portions of our meetings that are for public participation, and they are as follows. Verbal comments from the public on subsequent agenda items. We can now accept questions by telephone. Simply dial pens ready 250-749-6681. And your question will be broadcast in the meeting for staff and council to respond. As well, we will also pause still for the 3 minutes to allow residents to email their comments to general@lakecowichan.ca. Questions can also be emailed prior to the meeting. Also later in the meeting, we have question period, and we can also accept questions by telephone. Simply dial 250-749-6681. And I'll remind you of those numbers when we get to those sections. And your question will be broadcast in the meeting for staff and council to respond. As well, we will also pause for 3 minutes to allow residents to email their questions on agenda items to general@lakecowichan.ca. Questions can also be emailed prior to or following the meeting to the above email address to be answered by the appropriate committee chair or staff. Thank you to the public for attending tonight. So with that, I'd like to call this Town of Lake Cowichan regular council meeting to order Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021 at 6 p.m. And this meeting will be held electronically at Lake Cowichan, BC as per Ministerial Order M192. So I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask if there are any late items that have to be added to this agenda. See no hands. And I'll ask for approval of, Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, under in camera, if we could add another item to your indulgence, it's to deal with municipal services under section 91K of the community charter.
All right. Thank you. So then looking for a motion to approve this agenda as just amended, moved by Councillor Bomaka, seconded by Councillor Sandhu. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Adoption of the minutes. First, we'll do the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on January 26, 2021. Are there any errors or omissions? Then I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Councillor Austin, seconded by Councillor McGonigal. Thank you. Discussion? None. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Also, we need to adopt the minutes of the special meeting of council held on February 2nd, 2021. Moved by Councillor Sandhu, seconded by Councillor Austin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have no business arising, so that means we can move straight on to delegations. As you can see on, if you have the updated agenda, the Erica Bloom and Tristan Peterson regarding Youth Council were not able to attend this evening. So with that, we can move to B, which we'll have George Park and John Horn. George Park from GP Rollo and Associates, and John Horn from Cowichan Housing regarding the Town of Lake Cowichan Housing Needs Assessment. Welcome, gentlemen. And
hello.
I believe you have a presentation for us.
We do. Can you hear me?
Yes. We love to only have presentations go about 10 minutes, but if you're a few minutes over, I think we'll check with council if this is a long one and see if we can add that extra time on.
We can keep it pretty short if you want. Most of that's on my end. I think John's slides are all essential, but I can I can go a little bit. I can skip some slides if that's called for. So that's not a
All
problem.
right. Okay, we'll see how we are when we get there. Thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Just prior to starting, Mr. Mayor, if those who are watching the presentation can mute your camera, that'll open up some bandwidth for the presenter, just so there's no problems.
So I believe the administrator has to transfer the hosting for this time.
Yeah, for to put the PowerPoint up.
Let's see if I have that ability. So if that's, no, I don't have that power at the moment.
Joe, are you transferring the hosting?
Oh, I think you're the host now, George.
Okay.
Try it out.
Yes. Success.
Uh-huh.
So now I will make this a slideshow. Okay. Sometimes it gives me trouble when I try to change the slide. Now, I just changed the slide. Did everyone
No,
see
it
that?
hasn't happened yet, George. It's still the same slide. Yeah.
I don't know why it does this with Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop and start again, and maybe it'll work.
Okay.
Not sure exactly what it is. How about that?
That looks better because now you're on slide 2. So if now you're on slide 3. So it does seem to be moving there. So now
Okay.
we're back on slide 1. Perfect.
Excellent.
We'll
Okay.
start that then.
I'll pass it over. Oh, and I'll make it full screen.
Okay.
I'll pass it over to John.
All right. Thank you, George.
Thanks, John.
So myself, John Horn, Executive Director at Cowichan Housing, and my colleague George from GP Rolla will be presenting today on the housing needs assessment as it relates to the town of Lake Cowichan. So I wanted to start though by saying, of course, that I wanted to acknowledge that the next slide, thanks George, that we are on the traditional territories, and that this work took place on the traditional territories of the Cowichan tribes and the Didigat First Nation and the Halalt First Nation, Lyaxon First Nation, the Malahat First Nation, and Penelakut First Nation, and Cheminis First Nation, and Subatsik First Nation, Pakachan First Nation. And we just wanted to thank them all for the contribution they made to this report. But I would also acknowledge that we've spoken to about 250 community members who participated in our Place Speak questionnaire. And we spoke to a wide range of agencies, including things like the Chamber of Commerce and Habitat for Humanity and some of the business entities in the community and various agencies. So quite a wide range of consultation. And if I can get to the next slide, thanks, George. Today's report will be focusing on Lake Cowichan and the town of Lake Cowichan. And of course, it is one part of a much broader housing needs assessment that was done for the entire region, all the municipalities, all the electoral areas. And we've presented to almost everyone, I think, except for you guys, the final one tonight. So this report that you'll be hearing about, while it's specific to Lake Cowichan, of course, is in the context of the whole region. Thanks, George. Next slide. There's two types of findings. Mine is really a qualitative findings, which are drawn from the community engagement that we undertook. George's will be more about the quantitative findings, the data, the methodology, and the projections arising from that. So I'll be going first and just talking about the qualitative findings, and then I'll pass it over to George in a few minutes. So next slide, thanks. The community engagement we did, there was just 4 things we did. We took the Place Speak questionnaire, and that was where most of the citizens, so to speak, of the community got involved and had their input. We held 3 virtual community cafes too, and one was on the economy and housing, the second one was families and housing, and the third one was health and housing, and they were participated in by a range of agencies and individuals. We had stakeholder interviews with housing societies and all sorts of Chamber of Commerce, all sorts of people. And lastly, we interviewed every First Nation in the Cowichan Valley Regional District, the housing managers in particular, and got their input from their perspective as well. So that's been sort of the overall way we've done the community engagement. Next slide, thanks, George. So out of that engagement, a couple of key themes. One was that the clear thing that came across to us really was that in Lake Cowichan, one-bedroom apartments there's not a lot of them. And there seems to be a demand for that sort of product, which isn't readily available in the community. There was also a broadly expressed demand for a variety of affordable housing types. And people have talked about shifting towards smaller dwelling units as being something they would like to be able to do, but there maybe just wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that in the town of Lake Cowichan. We see that some seniors are having to leave the community due to the shortage of supported and assisted homes. And I know that you have some projects coming up, which we have been supporting, and we're looking forward to that, addressing that particular piece. But it is true that some people have had to move out of the community to find the right kind of residential fit for them. Young people have housing challenges as well, and that's partly around the price point as they're young in the workforce. But they're finding just housing of any kind difficult to obtain. And of course, lastly, there is a lack of purpose-built rental buildings. That's true for most of the region and probably true as much of Lake Cowichan as anywhere else. And that'll be hopefully something that will rectify over time. But right now, there hasn't been a lot of purpose-built rental buildings put up, and that's showing up in terms of the ability for people to find places in the town. Next slide. Thanks, George. We also talked a bit, and this is true for everyone, is that the housing prices and the costs of housing aren't typically well aligned with the regional wages. So it's two things. I mean, people have to live far away from where they want to work in order to afford that. And that, the kind of inflationary pacing we've seen on house prices and rental costs aren't reflected in wages. Typically, we're sort of, so to speak, not a high wage economy. And that stretch is getting bigger and bigger. People are noting that. For families, it's really tough if you're trying to find a 3 or 4 bedroom home. If you have a big family, I would note that this is, really true for those who come from places where large families are more the norm than here. And they arrive in this country with 5 or 8 kids, and good luck finding a house with 8 bedrooms anywhere in the valley, and particularly true of Lake Cowichan. So there's this issue for families, big families especially, finding it hard to find houses that are affordable. There's certainly a need for more non-market housing options. We talk about supportive housing and emergency housing, and I think there's come in the last couple of months, that's really come to a clear point here in Lake Cowichan that there are some folks who require this kind of housing, supportive or emergency sheltering, and the capacity exists in the community to provide it, but it's a lot of work to put that together. So that's a piece that was noted by lots of folks. They need more of that. And then, servicing, infrastructure, all that piece for everyone in the region, and particularly for the town like Lake Cowichan. Those lack of infrastructure and servicing issues do provide a bit of a barrier to housing development in your neighborhood. So those are the things that came forward from our engagement themes, and I think we could go to the next slide. Thanks, George. But by population, we sliced it up by population as well and looked at some key findings. And obviously, this is something I just touched on, people experiencing homelessness as a key finding, and something relatively new for the town of Lake Cowichan, but nonetheless one that does require attention. Youth, that's a high risk category for homelessness, and it's often a time in life when people set their path. So it's especially important that we pay attention to young people who are perhaps encountering that lifestyle for the first time, and we wouldn't wish them to get stuck there. So when we think about youth homelessness, it's often about how do we move people out of that lifestyle really quickly before they get accustomed to it. Housing for newcomers, I've mentioned, often their demographics are quite different than ours. They come to this community, they have struggled to find housing. That's true in Lake Cowichan as well. Special needs, what we hear from people when we talk to our stakeholders, people with service needs that have to go to Clement Center activities, for example, they often have to do that outside of their home community. And in order to access services as independent adults, they find themselves having to move closer to city center. So one of the things we've talked about is being able to provide an opportunity for people with special needs to maintain their home communities, to live in the places they grew up in, for example, or where their families are, because it does require that they sever their informal social networks to take up services and to move to centers. So we do want to look at how we provide residential options for people so they don't have to leave their home communities and they can maintain their social connections and their family supports. Lastly, workforce housing. Of course, that's being a struggle for everyone who tries to hire. I can attest that we have struggled with people who want to come to this community and work, but they have struggled to find housing, and especially in wage brackets that aren't the highest, it becomes much more difficult to keep staff who really do need just a place to live that they can afford. So that's another issue that we're looking at, the workforce housing, and that came forth from our discussions with our stakeholders as really being a clear issue. So that's an overall view of the housing needs assessment that we undertook in terms of the public process and engagement process. What I do now, I think if I can go to the next slide.
Oops.
And
Sorry.
I do believe, I think that now I'm about to turn it over to Mr. George Parker, who will take you through the quantitative side of this analysis. Thanks, George.
Thank you, John. As John mentioned, my name is George Parker. I work for GP Rollo and Associates, and I did some quantitative work for this project. One question, because I'm the host now, I'm getting notifications. Someone named Brian is in the waiting room. Should I admit that person to the meeting, or is that after us? Is that, I can't hear you.
That's
Later on.
after you.
Okay, great. I'll ignore it then. Excellent. So first of all, I know that in the interest of time, I have to go a little quickly. And so I am going to really rapid fire cover the next few slides, which are talking about the period covered by the last three censuses, 2006, 2011, and 2016 censuses. Worth noting, however, that some of the numbers you'll see here deviate from the community profiles that one might normally see associated with the census. And the reason for that is that we're using a custom data set provided by the government of BC, specifically to be used for housing needs assessments. And it excludes members of the population who are not in private households. So people in seniors' homes or other similar establishments. So without further ado, I will simply get going. This is a slide about population growth. The main takeaway here is that in the 10 years between 2006 and 2016, the province of BC grew by about 12%, the Cbrd grew by about 8%, and Lake Cowichan grew a little bit faster than the Cbrd at about 10% growth during that period. This slide compares those same three jurisdictions with respect to housing tenure. Here you can see the share of renters. All three jurisdictions had a rising share of renters over this period. BC has more renters than the Cbrd, and Lake Cowichan has slightly more renters than the Cbrd. This slide is about median household income. From 2006 to 2016, both British Columbia and the Cbrd increased their median household income, and Lake Cowichan stayed fairly stable, constant, although there was a dip during the recession after 2008. However, these numbers are nominal, which means they reflect inflation. If you remove inflation from the equation, you're looking at real income figures, which would be here. So by comparison, the Cbrd, oh, no, okay, here we are. That's strange. Oh, I've been pressing the wrong button.
Oh, you're going
Okay,
backwards.
median household income. Now, if you remove inflation, this is real, this is nominal, this is real. So as you can see, in fact, incomes in the Cbrd went down, and incomes in Lake Cowichan went down as well. This is just to give you a sense of what income distribution tends to look like. On the left, you'll see BC, and on the right, you'll see Lake Cowichan. The main takeaway here is that median incomes in Lake Cowichan are somewhat lower on average, but it's also worth noting that income inequality is worse in the province as a whole than in Lake Cowichan. You can tell that by seeing that the very low and very high income groups make up a much smaller share of Lake Cowichan than of the province. This is a similar statistic, but comparing owner households on the left in Lake Cowichan to renter households on the right. And once again, you can see that that income distribution is much more skewed towards the low income side for renters than owners. No surprise. This slide addresses that very statistic. The solid green bar is owner median household income. The hatched green bar is renter median household income. And the solid green bar in the middle is the ratio between those two incomes. Higher green bar in the middle indicates more inequality between owners and renters. As you can see, the Cbrd has more inequality between those tenure groups in the province, and Lake Cowichan is somewhere in between.
George, could I just jump in for a minute?
Yes.
Just a verbal show from council. Are we okay to go past the 10 minutes? We're about past it now, so I'm assuming the answer would be yes. But
Yeah, all good.
oh, good. Okay, thanks, George.
Thank you very
Carry
much.
on.
Okay, great. So this slide compares BC to Lake Cowichan with respect to bedroom counts. In BC, there was about an even split between two-bedroom, this is in 2016, an even split between two-bedroom, three-bedroom, and four-bedroom units, about 27% in each category, with fewer one-bedroom units and even fewer studios. Whereas in Lake Cowichan, three-bedroom units dominated almost 40%, followed by four-bedroom units at 31%, and then two-bedroom units at 22%, with very few one-bedroom units. Over this decade, the share of three-bedroom units shrank, and the share of four-bedroom units in Lake Cowichan increased. Statistics Canada defines three housing standards. There's suitability, meaning that the dwelling is not overcrowded and has an adequate number of bedrooms. In BC, the share of all households falling below the suitability standard decreased from 2006 to 2016. Compared to BC, households in Lake Cowichan are less crowded. The second standard is called adequacy. Adequacy means that the dwelling does not need major repairs. The share of all households falling below the adequacy standard in BC remained constant between 2006 and 2016. Compared to the province, a greater share of Lake Cowichan's households live in inadequate conditions. And the third standard is affordability, defined as housing expenses falling below 30% of household income. In BC, the share of all households falling below the affordability standard remained constant between 2006 and 2016. And compared to BC, Lake Cowichan began the decade with a slightly smaller share of households in core housing need and ended the decade with a slightly greater share of households in core housing need. That is compared to the province. Moving on, I'm just going to skip this slide. It's fairly trivial information. This graph shows average assessed value per housing unit in Lake Cowichan over time, excluding purpose-built rental. As you can see, single-family homes have consistently been the most valuable type of unit, with all other types typically having similar levels of value on a per-unit basis. Housing prices were stable from 2008 to 2016, or in some cases even declined, and that suggests that land supply kept up with demand. This was likely due to the global economic crisis of 2008 and the following recession. Since 2016, prices have increased in all categories, suggesting that demand has increased more than supply. One purpose of the housing needs assessment is to compare housing prices with household incomes. Now, the most recent household income data we had from the government was from 2016. So we needed to find an outside source for household income data for 2019, for which we used data from Environics Analytics. That's shown here. This is a distribution of the incomes of owner households in Lake Cowichan in 2019. As you can see, it's that similar kind of skewed bell-shaped curve that we've seen previously. And we use the, as for housing values for owner households, we used the BC assessment property rule. And this shows the distribution of the valuations of properties in Lake Cowichan. As you can see, they cluster around the $350,000 mark. We performed an analysis where we compared the housing costs for owners versus housing incomes for those same owners. We performed that analysis for each jurisdiction in the Cbrd. Each line on this graph represents a jurisdiction. If you isolate Lake Cowichan, You can see here that owner households with mortgages making up, so basically the horizontal axis is household income and the vertical axis is housing expenses that we'd expect for households with that income. If you are above the black line, you'll tend to spend more than 30% of your income on housing. And if you're above the red line, you'd tend to spend more than 50% of your income on housing. So as you can see here, owner households with mortgages in Lake Cowichan making less than about $46,000 per year would be expected to spend more than 30% of their income on housing, which is 17% of owner households, which is in line with the trend observed in the census period. This graph is similar to the last graph, but for renters instead of owners. Once again, as incomes increase, so do housing costs, but typically not as quickly. Renters with housing costs below about $48,000 will tend to spend more than 30% of their income on housing. That's 62% of renter households, which is worse than during the census period. And renters with households below $26,000 will tend to spend more than 50% of their income on housing, which is 29% of renter households. Overall, including both owners and renters, 29% of Lake Cowichan households are in core housing need, which is a continuation of the worsening trend observed during the census period. We were asked by Cbrd staff to use the population and housing projections produced by Rennie Intelligence in 2019. But Rennie produced 4 projections. What are those 4 projections? There's a baseline scenario, which is based on a sociographic model with historical trends and land use data to produce a projection. And then scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3 take the same amount of growth projected within that baseline scenario and distribute it differently between jurisdictions. Scenario 1 takes the same total regional quantity of growth, but assumes that 90% of electoral area growth will occur within the urban containment boundary. Scenario 2 takes the same total regional quantity of growth, but assumes that 90% of all growth will occur within the urban containment boundary. And scenario 3 takes the same total regional amount of growth, but assumes that 75% of all growth will occur in areas with water services, sewer services, or both. So which is the most appropriate for Lake Cowichan? We originally went with the more aggressive scenario 2, that's the middle one there, which would have the town's population increase to more than 4,000 by 2025. However, in response to our first draft, we received a recommendation from Lake Cowichan's consulting town planner that a population projection of 3,600 by 2025 would be more appropriate. As you can see in this graphic, that is quite close to Rennie's scenario 3, so we went with that projection instead. Under this scenario, Lake Cowichan would grow from about 1,500 households in 2019 to 1,542 households in 2025, achieving overall growth of 3%, which would be much slower than the 17% growth in households seen from 2006 to 2016. In this same scenario, population growth would be 4%, from about 3,400 in 2019 to more than 3,500 in 2025, as shown in this graphic. Population rising faster than households would imply that average household size is increasing slightly, from 2.26 to 2.29, both of which are according to Rennie. Now, moving on to questions of housing suitability, which is to say bedroom counts. Statistics Canada defines housing suitability as follows: no less than 1 bedroom per household member, except for couples, and except for children, depending on their age and sex. It may not be evident, but this definition is extremely austere. Merely meeting this requirement throughout a community would produce extremely cramped housing. Both Environics and Rennie provide estimates of population per household, but we lacked information on age and sex, so we simplified the Statistics Canada definition to no more than 1 bedroom per household, but couples may share a room. The stipulation that couples may share a bedroom is very important because a huge number of households contain couples. In Lake Cowichan in 2016, 83% of 2-person households consisted of a couple, 73% of 3-person households contained a couple, 73% of 4-person households contained a couple, and so on. Defining housing need in this way, which is only slightly more generous than Statistics Canada, produces the counterintuitive outcome presented here. The majority of housing need, shown in green, is for 1-bedroom units, but the majority of housing in the town, shown in teal, has 3 or more bedrooms. In other words, most households in Lake Cowichan have more bedrooms than they need. In fact, existing supply in 2016 already exceeded housing needs in 2025 for units with 2 or more bedrooms. However, it would be an error to interpret this as suggesting that only 1-bedroom units should be constructed in the future. This statistic, which was required by the Housing Needs Assessment legislation that was released by the government of BC, represents the minimum number of bedrooms, not the ideal number of bedrooms. This would be the number of units by bedroom count that would be required to avoid overcrowding. In other words, because most households in Lake Cowichan have more than enough housing, housing need by bedroom count, as represented here, is not a very useful or informative statistic. It might be a useful statistic in a place with widespread overcrowding, but Lake Cowichan is not such a place. Although it is still worth noting that the town could use more one-bedroom units, which was also a finding of the community engagement research. Just wanted to clear that up. Moving on to household income. In the interest of time, I won't talk about this too much. We used Environics Analytics to generate two household income projections, one reflecting a fast recovery from COVID-19 and one reflecting a slow recovery from COVID-19. If you look at real income rather than nominal income, the rapid recovery scenario has real incomes going up slightly in Lake Cowichan, and the slow recovery scenario has real incomes going down slightly in Lake Cowichan. And that is it.
Yeah. Thank you, George. We're happy to take any questions or any comments or questions that anyone has. We'd be happy to entertain them at this point.
Of course, we can't see. Can you see anybody's faces besides yourself?
I can see a few faces. Why don't I stop sharing my screen?
Transfer the hosting. Okay. So Councillor McGonigal goes first.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Second time I've seen this, a little Cole's Notes version for Lake Cowichan. Appreciate that. One thing that was missed from this presentation, from the Cbrd presentation, was your conversation about rental only zones that may help in the affordability portion of housing. I have brought this up a number of times within discussions at this council and previous councils as to a possibility of affordability within that rental only zoning. So I'd like you to expand on that if you could, George.
Sure. Well, rental only zones, although not a positive focus of our research, are certainly something we're aware of. And anyone who's interested in affordability and rental housing supply will be pleased that municipalities are now empowered to create this kind of zoning as of a couple years ago. It's a powerful tool, potentially. And what it can do is ensure that not just existing supply of rental housing, but new supply is easier to create. It was always possible for municipalities to introduce zero net loss bylaws so that any removal of rental housing needed to be replaced on a 1-to-1 unit basis. But now municipalities are empowered to assign rental as a zoning specifically. Of course, any existing property owners don't need to worry as much as they may think, because existing uses are of course grandfathered in, but it is possible for a lot to be zoned for rental, which means any redevelopment would need to consist of rental housing. And that could have positive impacts. Of course, it requires the implementation of that zoning ability to be enforced.
Excellent. A follow-up, if I may, Mayor Day.
Yes, please.
Your numbers that you've given are mainly from 2016 census. Given that we have an updated census coming this year, how would the input of data from this census be implemented into your results?
I assume you're asking me. That would be great news. To a great extent, because of the timing of this research, we were doing work in early 2020, much of which reflected the present case and the present situation. We were attempting to comment on existing affordability and existing incomes and existing rates of tenure and so on. But if we had, then in order to do that, we needed to rely upon data that was privately generated by outside sources with, what's the word I'm looking for here? Proprietary methods and so on. If we were to do this immediately after a census, that would enable us to use government sanctioned, standardized, and approved data, and we would allow us to use a smaller, more reliable set of data sources, essentially. So we would be using less Environics data specifically. Not that there's anything wrong with Environics. It's just that if we can use census data, we would rather do so.
I would add, George, that as the census data is released from the next census, that we'll be in a position to take all the data sets that George and the crew at Modus has created for these housing needs assessments and sort of update the key ones based on new census data that arrives. And that's something that Cowichan Housing Association would do, just for us to track where the trends are going and what those data sets would show us from the 2019, 2020 census. So that's something I think we'll be tracking as we go forward as an organization, hopefully filling in those gaps.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Fernandez? Unmute, please, sir. Could you please unmute? Thanks, Joe.
I wonder if our planner could maybe speak to what just transpired.
Yeah.
James.
Okay. There we go.
Mr. James Van Hemert.
Yes. So, so I'm familiar with the work, and we've had an opportunity to review earlier drafts. And we are going to share this with the Advisory Planning Commission as well. And that's in part due to the concern we raised earlier about the projection and the way our population was, the component of the overall regional growth was assigned to the town. So I wasn't prepared right now to go into detail on that. I could, Joe, if you wish, but at this point, I think the initial response that I made on behalf of the town with respect to the population projection was accurately portrayed by George Parker. But at this point, I think we're still reviewing the final numbers and are discussing that internally about where that takes us, because right now, the overall increase of 43 units to 2025, or thereabouts, 43 and something, is quite a low number and actually doesn't reflect what's happening on the ground. So that's a matter we have taken up with the consultants, and that's not currently reflected in this presentation. So, but I do appreciate, George, the detail with which you explained this and how the different scenarios came about with different rates of growth based on infrastructure within the overall region. I think that's a good explanation of why there's different growth projections. And that would be true for Lake Cowichan or any area, actually. So, Joe, is that in line with what you expected me to speak to?
Yeah, that's basically what I was expecting from you.
Okay.
Thank you for meeting your expectations, Mr. Van
Yes.
Hemert.
Wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, everybody. So a comment. Oh, Councillor Bomaka, please.
Thank you very much. It was pretty interesting when I went through the study, so thank you very much. But question I'd like to ask, because I couldn't see anywhere in that statistic, when you're talking about people with 1 bedrooms and then you're talking about 2 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms. And I think, George, you had talked about normally in a 1 bedroom household, you would have 1 couple. I'm wondering how much statistics you have there as to adult children living in the home.
Interesting question. So when I specifically was referring to these shares, I think I listed something like 83% of two bedroom households are a couple, 73% of 83% of 2-person households are a couple, 73% of 3-person households contain a couple and so on. I think that's what you're referring to. That is specifically from the census. So they essentially list the population, or rather the number of households, broken down in several ways. And one of those ways that it's broken down is essentially family composition. So the statistic I'm looking at doesn't refer to age at all. It in fact refers to families that consist of how many couples they consist of, essentially. And I believe you can also get statistics on whether it's a family with parents and a child, or a couple that doesn't contain, and the third person there isn't related to them. I don't think the statistic I referred to relates actually to the age of the child. So I have different family categories, including couples and non-couples. But the age of the outstanding person, be that a child or not, wasn't actually reflected in those statistics. Another thing to note is that this is a very pared down way of estimating need by bedroom count. So what that means is we've simply taken the following strict rule, which is 1 bedroom per person, couples can share, which means that according to the way we've categorized it, if that is a 5-year-old child or a 25-year-old child, that wouldn't make a difference for our statistics. BC, or rather Stats Canada, does define overcrowding, that is to say suitability, with reference to the age and gender of the children. But because we didn't have that data, we ignored that nuance and simplified it. And our simplified version is actually slightly more generous than BC Stats, because some people who would be able to share according to the federal government, I keep saying BC Stats, I mean Stats Canada. Some people who would be allowed to share according to the federal government would not be allowed to share according to our method.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking that the dynamic of the family is changing because there's people who have aged parents that are living with them to care for them. And then there's also people who have adult children at home because there's either the inability for income for them to have their own place, or they don't have affordable housing to be able to move on. So that's just interesting when I did see your stats.
Very true. And it would be, but that nuance would be not reflected in our statistics, and that's by design.
Thank you.
You're right.
We heard that anecdotally as well, that, kids are staying at home longer. That seems to be across the board, so.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else on council have a question there? All right. I just have one question to maybe wrap up, unless it starts another round here. Maybe this is something our planner, Mr. James Van Hemert, would like to answer. The next step for the town of Lake Cowichan that would involve perhaps the APC or council.
Yes,
James.
thank you. Thank you, Mayor. We are presenting this to the Advisory Planning Commission later this week. I know that the Cbrd is asking for a council resolution to receive this study. It is my understanding that we do not have a practice of doing that on the same night as the delegation. So we are going to discuss the results of the study with the Advisory Planning Commission. They're going to be presented the material. And we got a handy PowerPoint to give to them as well to review. It's a nice summary. And then the current plan is to have this presented to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee, which I understand is in fact all of council, subsequently to the APC this week.
Okay, so that means we could officially accept this report at that meeting, Mr. Fernandez?
At least for a recommendation of that.
Recommendation, yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Last call for questions or comments to the delegation. Okay, well, thank you very much, George and John. This is all good stuff for us. I know we have some work to do there, and we look forward to hearing back from our APC and, of course, working with you in the future, as you are the folks who are the experts at that end anyways, and
Thank you
our
very
experts
much.
here and council will look at ways forward after that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a great night.
Thank you. All right. And James, thank you for being here tonight as well.
And James is going to come back at the little later in the evening.
Okay. All right. So that moves us down to the verbal comment from the public on subsequent agenda items. So we'll open the phone lines at 250-749-6681 for questions, please. And also we'll start the clock now on our 3 minutes and see where that gets us. So just hang tough, everybody. Don't disappear too far. And if you have to go to the washroom then or anything else, then let us know when you get back so we can answer questions appropriately. So we'll start the clock now and we'll look at about 6:48 at starting up again. And hopefully we'll get some questions via telephone during that time as well. Just a reminder, questions to 250-749-6681 or email to general@lakecowichan.ca. Okay, we do have to come up with music sometime in the before the new year.
I have nice Vivaldi music.
Vivaldi music.
That sounded like James there. Vivaldi would be good. The Jeopardy music was a bit annoying.
Don't put us to sleep.
Well, it only goes for 20 seconds generally on the Jeopardy, and when it was too long. I do have popular music though, if you want. Dance music. Oh, I should turn my mic off. Goodbye.
Mr. Fernandez.
Got somebody on the phone.
All right.
Can you give us your name?
It's Janet.
Okay, Janet, last name?
Kirk.
Kirk, okay. Is it relating to a matter on the agenda?
It is, yeah.
Okay, go for it.
I'm just wondering with the housing that was just brought up, who's funding all of that? What services, all the services that they want brought in, who's going to fund that for the support of housing?
I could start that answer and maybe the administrator could fill in any details. This is not a plan for us to fund and finance and build houses. It's just giving us a snapshot of what we would probably be looking for. Normally, the bulk of what you saw in that report would be done by private developers. And much like you would see a traditional subdivision go in, and work its way through a planning process with the town involving that. But this is not something to be 100% funded. There are possibilities to get government grants from provincial and federal sources to subsidize the building of what some would call affordable housing. And but none of that is reality. This is just helping us get to a plan on how council would see this moving forward. So there's my answer, and I don't know if staff or anybody else wants to add detail.
Indeed. The study is being financed by the provincial government, so we are not paying anything for that study. That's just been conducted.
All right. Thank you for that question, Janet.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Somebody's still on?
Okay, we are at 6:49, so I don't know if there's any email questions.
None?
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, that was a pretty good uptake for the first night on the telephone. And okay, so we can move on down the agenda then to item 7, which is correspondence. I see none on the agenda, A or B, so that can move us on down to council and committee reports. And we have the Finance and Administration Committee meeting held on February 9th, 2021. Councillor McGonigal.
Thank you, Mayor Day. I'd like to move the minutes of the Finance Administration Committee meeting held electronically as per Ministerial Order M192 on Tuesday, February 9th, with the following recommendation. That the committee recommend approval of the Lake Cowichan Fire Department incident report in the amount of $7,427.29 for 2020. December 2020 be approved. And I believe that's the only recommendation. So with
Moved by-
that,
Whoops.
we'll move it.
And seconded by Councillor Sandu. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you very much, Councillor McGonigal. Next, we have the Public Works and Environmental Services Committee meeting held on February 16th, 2021. Councillor Bomaka.
Thank you. I'd like to move the minutes of the Public Works and Environmental Services Committee meeting held electronically at Lake Cowichan as per Ministerial Order M192, Tuesday, February the 16th, as presented, please.
Seconded by Councillor Austin. Any questions on that? I'll call the question itself. All those in favor? Opposed? None. Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Councillor Austin, so now the minutes of the Parks, Recreation, Culture Committee meeting held February 16th, 2021. Councillor Austin.
Thank you. I'd like to move the minutes of the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee meeting held electronically at Lake Cowichan as per Ministerial Order M192 on Tuesday, February 16th, 2021, as presented.
Seconded by Councillor Sandu. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. That moves us to the Sustainable Planning Committee held on February 9th, 2021, held virtually as per Ministerial Order M192. I would move those minutes as presented.
Oh, whatever.
Second by Councillor McGonigal. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. That moves us down to the Cowichan Lake Rec Commission, and that is myself as well. Just let me bring up those minutes for very few of the highlights. In that meeting, Tor Repstock was again elected by acclamation, the chair of that commission, and Michelle Davis was elected by acclamation as well as vice chair. So currently, there are a few programs running at Cowichan Lake Recreation. We have Hatha Yoga, gymnastics for kids and youth, art classes for kids, and public skating sessions. There are no other ice rentals at this time except for minor hockey, as they are allowed to carry on with practices but no games. And the Programmer 2 position left vacant by a recent departure by Ms. Tanya Kroll is still currently available. So those are the highlights. Yes, Councillor Austin.
Just one thing, she left off, they did leave off that we still have the Fit for Life classes on Wednesday. That's one thing we're doing. And they're carrying on into April.
And they're inside the
Yep, we're in the upper hall.
Upper hall?
Yeah.
Okay.
That just one left out. I didn't want to.
Yeah. Good stuff. Any age limit on that, Councillor Austin?
It's more for seniors, but if anybody wants to come, they can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So that's there's the minutes from that meeting. We don't need to approve those, do we? No. All right, I'll go back to the agenda. Okay, so that will move us to the Vancouver Island Regional Library. Councillor Bomaka.
Yes, thank you. So we had our AGM via Zoom, the first time ever, of course, for everything. Gabby Wickstrom, who's the mayor of Port McNeill, was elected as our board chair. All but 3 of the rural branches are now at phase 3 levels of service, which allows washroom access to computers. You can go in person, check out, and as always, you can still go and pick up holds, etc. They won't be going to phase 4 to increase any services unless they have some direction from the provincial health order. So they're operating as usual for now. I think their hours have changed a little bit. Today they were closed all day for some upgrades, but they'll be back to their usual opening. So new memberships during the pandemic grew by 12,000 new memberships. And I guess that's attributed to people being confined at home, and they were doing a lot of online reading. And so that's great. 82% were adults, 12% were children. And they said that through 2020, the visits online through the library and social media sites was 1.4 million visitors online. So it's great to see that even though people couldn't get to their libraries, they were still accessing them in other ways. So when we did the facilities update report, there were a few interesting things. Campbell River has demolished the existing branch, and they're going to build a 2-story, 20,000 square foot new library, which is to begin in 2021. Souk is still underway for construction. And the interesting one to me was North Saanich, which was identified as a site at the Panorama Rec Center. So now this site has now been deemed to be part of the Agricultural Land Reserve. And so now they're seeking approval for that someone to oversee it to see if they can build the library. So I thought that we weren't the only community struggling with ALR. And our Cowichan Lake Library is looking at having some remedial flooring work done in 2021. So I like that when they do their capital plan with the library, they're always foreseeing down the road for refurbishments and working to keep the libraries in good repair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wamaka. Good report, and glad to hear that the library is still being used. And I'm actually quite impressed with the uptake on the online stuff. Cool. Advisory planning, or any questions for Councillor Wamaka before we move on? Okay, we can move to Advisory Planning Commission. Councillor Austin.
Thank you. We had our last meeting on January 28th by Zoom. All members were present. Darlene volunteered to take on the role of chair, and we welcomed new members Lynn Klein and Janice New, and former members Pat Lamont and Robert, I forgot his last name now, Patterson. James and Joe and myself were also there. Zoning bylaw is just about ready to be voted on by the APC, then it goes to council for final approval. We're waiting for maps from the Cbrd and a couple of corrections on some of the different pages with descriptions, zone changes and things like that, numbers, terms, just to make it more simple and easier to read. There is a rental only zone in one section. No one's going to wake up one day and see that their zone has changed, though. That's zone regulations haven't changed on them while they're sleeping, and the document has just been cleaned up for easier understanding. James mentioned that a zoning bylaw takes policies and makes them real. So that's an important little note that I have in my notes. He talked about the active transport network plan. Dan and Beth from Urban Systems spent a lot of time there and can provide shovel-ready projects. They zoned in on cycling, walking, bus connections per our OCP map and our age-friendly study. There will be a Zoom open house at some point, then the final presentation to council. He mentioned there are 3 grants outstanding in the works right now: sewer, municipal hall, and Centennial Field. And our next meeting is this Thursday.
Very good. Any questions for Councillor Austin? All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Austin, for being a part of that commission. Then we can move to Community Forest Co-op. Councillor McGonigal, please.
Nothing to report at this time, Mayor Day.
Okay, thank you. Any upcoming meetings?
At the call of the chair, should something
okay.
arise, yes.
Okay, thank you. So that can move us to other reports, and Councillor McGonigal, the Cowichan Valley Regional District.
Thank you very much, Mayor Day. Busy time for the regional district. The final CBRD budget discussion was held February 10th alongside corporate services meeting. It was one of the quickest corporate services meetings I've chaired in the past 4 months. It wasn't 7, 8, or 9 hours. All the heavy lifting had already been done in previous meetings. So part of the discussion was the tax insert that will be going into different areas of the regional district as to how the increases will impact taxpayers. Community parks in Area H was approved at that one. Different community parks budgets, as you know, in the CBRD, every function has its own separate budget. And those who partake in that are the only ones who contribute to it. I did post on my Facebook page the impact of Lake Cowichan's increase, which is 2.56%. If you go to the CBRD website and bring up the budget, it will show in schedule, picture up here, Schedule E, 2.56% increase. The majority of that would reside within the regional parkland acquisition and solid waste complex. $9 increase per 100,000 in solid waste, and small portion in regional parks, and the majority in the acquisition fund. If you also go to Schedule D, that will show all the functions that the town of Lake Cowichan participates in the regional district, and shows the impact per $100,000 between 2020 and 2021. Meeting tomorrow will be the hospital board. Looking forward to an update on how the Cowichan Hospital site is going, and any update on that, and board as well at that time. So the total increase for CBRD wide was 2.48%. There was a mandate from the board to come back with a 0% increase this year. Unfortunately, there was some increases that were not within the realm of control within the regional district. Solid waste was one of them. The other was the regional parkland acquisition, which was championed by a number of directors at the table and increased according to a weighted vote. So if you are interested, go to the CBRD website, bring up the budget, and you can look at all 200 functions if you wish. Thank you, Mayor Day.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McGonigal. Any questions for Councillor McGonigal? And thank you for posting those 2 charts and that 1 page, because that kind of in my time was the easiest way for everybody to understand. And And thank you very much for all your time. I know that I watched 1 or 2 sessions, part of it anyways, as much as I could take before I had to get on with my day, and challenging. We can be thankful there's no grant and aid process this year.
True that. But I'd just like to say it was one of the most difficult budget processes that I've had to go through, not only regional district wise, but town wise, as it was all held virtually. And you know very well that it's totally different when you're face to face and you can see people's body reactions, etc. I think there's a little more temptation to show your emotions when you're virtual. The body language is recorded and everybody knows what you're thinking or doing. So just a reminder that sneers show up. You shouldn't do this. But it was difficult but rewarding.
Yeah, definitely a great experience for a chairperson in maintaining composure and trying to maintain the composure of 13 or 14 others. So again, thank you very much for your work there. All right, that can move us down, if we have no questions for Councillor McGonigal still, to the Community Outreach Team Committee. Councillor Austin.
Thank you. I have quite a long report this time. Our meeting was on February 18th. Again, it was a Zoom meeting. Carolyn, our community nurse, talked about the COVID-19 vaccine rollout coming soon to this area. Right now, the priority is given to seniors, facilities and staff, hospital staff, etc. When they're ready to immunize the public in different age categories, there will be lots of advertising. People will need to register, no drop-ins. And I know they've talked to the arena about renting either the upper or lower hall because we might have to move our exercise, but no date has been set yet. Amanda Sawatsky mentioned that one of the counselors has moved on, so they're 1 counselor short right now, which may cause a little break in services. Some counseling can be done on Zoom with some groups in outlying areas, and that is very helpful. Adrienne, also a counselor, talked about the soup kitchens going well. We're doing soup and sandwiches on Monday and Thursday. Lots of people are coming in. A lot of new people that they had never seen before are coming in for the free market on Wednesdays and benefiting from the products we have. A lot of the sandwiches we make can be frozen, so they can stay during the week. And there are lots more locals now that are marginalized than they have seen in the last little while. Adrian has put up some homeless at Lake Cowichan Lodge for a few nights from time to time, just to get them out of the elements, sometimes 3 nights at a time. But they are charging $100 per night, so she does have a grant for that. She mentioned that Frank Hornbrook, again, will be preparing income taxes for those in need for free. If you can pay, it's welcome, but if you can't, he will do it for free. And he'll be at community service Mondays and Thursdays from 1 to 3. People can drop off their information and he will call them when it's completed. Laurel with the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction wants to help more of these people in the community. She said she comes to town and can't seem to find some of them, so she's going to connect with community services and possibly be there on a Wednesday when they're coming for the food handout. And she wants us to give her number out for all of those in need and drop off some cards. She also asked again if the town has any plans to house the homeless. And I said once again that we have no property or empty buildings that we could use at this time. And there are not sufficient services in this area for the homeless at this time. Some are staying in the empty schools, but she would have to contact School District 79 to find out what options would be for say Stanley Gordon or something like that. That's not under the realm of the town. It's not really something we can handle. And Linda Sked reported that our Fit for Life class was ongoing. There's free family skating going on several times, especially during Easter, free skate, free rentals. And they've advertised for a recreation coordinator to replace Tanya Call. Thank you. Good meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Austin. Lots of food in that meeting to chew on.
Yes.
And okay, any questions for Councillor Austin? No, okay, thank you very much. That move us along to our Cowichan and Councillor Sandhu.
Thank you. We did not have a meeting in February. Our next meeting is March 11th, 2021 at 5:30 by Zoom.
Thank you very much. So that'll move you along again to Cowichan Watershed Board, Councillor Sandhu.
So we held our meeting yesterday. We introduced a new member, Linda Higgins. She's a representative from DFO. We were requested a letter of support requesting that Mosaic pause current operations on their land surrounding the Cocosila Ancient Forest so that there can be community consultation regarding the logging along the Cocosila watershed. So the Cowichan Watershed Board is writing a letter to Mosaic just asking for a pause on operations for public consultation. The other item we had a professor, Deborah Curran from the University of Victoria Environmental Law Clinic. She reported on the WEIR licensing research. The 5 legal questions that that were presented to her for her to get information was, what types of license holders exist under the Water Sustainability Act in the context of conservation water uses? So which, if any, would be applicable to potential parties? The second question, can one entity own a water storage structure, a dam, a weir, while another entity holds the licenses? If so, what obligations would the entities have? The third question, can one entity hold a water license while another entity is responsible for any liabilities arising from that license? The fourth question, which limitations exist for the province to be both regulator and holder of a water license? The fifth question is the province's refusal to hold a conservation water licenses contrary to the duties as fiduciaries towards Indigenous peoples and Section 35 Constitutional Act 1982, UNDRIP, and the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act? So the Cowichan Watershed Board will receive this full report this spring. So as soon as I receive it and the Watershed Board receives it and passes it, then I'll bring it forth to Town Council. Co-chair Chief Seymour and Tom Rutherford will be making a presentation to the Cbrd board the next few months. The topic is about discussing a watershed board and Cbrd strategic partnership to secure core funding the watershed board receives yearly from the Cbrd. So every year the watershed board sends a request and does a presentation to the Cbrd board requesting the core funding they have of $50,000. So what they're wanting to do is make it a function, if that's correct, Tim. And so it's under the bylaw number 4202, the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Service. We have the Cowichan Watershed Society AGM is this Thursday, and I've been reappointed to the board of directors for 2021. The 2020 current board of the society is the Honorable David Anderson, David Slade, Tim Kaczynski, Dr. Shannon Waters, Deborah Toporowski, and myself. And Tom Rutherford and Jill Thompson are staff. They're also part of the society. So we'll be having our AGM Thursday night.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Sandhu. Sounds like some pretty heavily weighted questions coming your way and a lot of great discussion on license holders for should the new weir happen and be completed.
Well, the weir will happen, but the biggest issue they're facing right now is the water licensee. And that is going to probably carry on for another couple years, they figure. So.
Councilor McGonigal, yeah, and I have a question for you, Councilor McGonigal, too. At what point will the Cbrd become involved with, are they involved in approving a water licensee at some point, or do you know that much yet?
I don't believe that would reside within the regional district. That would be the
Okay.
water controller of BC. I did have a comment through
Yes,
you,
please.
if I may. Given some of those legal questions that you referred to being sent to the environmental lawyer, it's interesting that those questions were broached 6-7 years ago as to liability, licensees, authority, and we're still looking for the appropriate answer. So it's not an easy fix as to the current licensee, the current water license holder, and the future holder. If the province does not wish to take that on, it could be a complex and bi-party license agreement that would be looked at, and the legalities of that are complex. So it's going to be interesting to read that report, and congratulations on the society appointment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor McGonigal. I look forward to seeing some movement on that water license issue. All right, thank you, Councilor Sandhu, for being a part of that and reporting back with all that detail. So that moves us now to staff reports. And one item on there, the application for a development variance permit for REM Lot A Plan VIP 64669 District Lot 13 Cowichan Lake Land District. Mr. Fernandez, would you like to introduce this to us?
Your worship, before I start, I should let Mr. Walker in
Thank you.
so he can be part of the proceedings. Wow. It's coming in.
Hello.
Hello, Brian.
Hi.
Hey, everybody,
Okay.
this is Brian Locker, proponent working on behalf, or the, I don't know what could you introduce yourself with your title, please?
Oh, yes, Brian Locker. I work with some senior project manager with BV Developments. We're undertaking the Point Ideal subdivision.
All right, so back to Mr. Fernandez, please.
Yes, I can start off. I think Mr. Locke is becoming a common presence at these meetings. Council's aware. In any case, BD Developments made an application, variance development application to vary a couple of issues. One is to withdraw the stop work order, and the other is to allow them to proceed with the engineering design and stormwater management plan, which they claim the town approved. And let me give a little bit of a background on this whole issue. The applicant came to the town in late 2019 looking for a subdivision approval, preliminary approval, which was given to them in early 2020. And subsequently, there were conditions laid on the application. Subsequently, they came back with engineered drawings, which showed 50% to construction stage. And by the time it went out to tender, things had changed. So now we have an application for development variance permit, which basically asking for council to vary the subdivision development and stormwater management issues that we have on board. So the applicant wants to vary the requirements of a piped stormwater system, which was consistent with the stormwater management plan prepared on December 8, 2019. And this information has been sent out to the adjacent homeowners. They're all aware of it. We've got copies of letters submitted by some of the property owners, and I think you've all been privy to the report prepared by Mr. Van Hemert. So I think we should give Mr. Locker an opportunity to address this issue.
Yes, good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with council this evening. Basically, this application relates to a stop work order that I think was issued on November the 6th, 2020. Basically, and at that point in time, construction was already 70% complete on infrastructure installation. So basically, construction had gone quite a ways. Our relative timelines, I mean, basically, Joe's referring to a 50% design. I'm not sure, because design basically evolves until the 100%. Now, the 100% design was completed in early March of 2020. This design, along with the relevant reports, so that included stormwater management reports, the environment reports, the geotechnical reports, etc., was submitted to the town on March the 9th, 2020, in an application for a construction permit. So the town, between March 9th and March 19th, the town reviewed the design and issued the construction permit. So there was no changes requested at the time to the design, right? So our stormwater management design has not changed from early March until, and we're still proposing the same system. Now, as of November the 6th, the town is basically retracting their approved design and construction permit and saying now that we must install a complete underground storm sewer system before they'll let us proceed with construction. Now, we're aware that there was other documents, the PLA and the servicing bylaw and so on and so forth. They do reference a storm sewer system, but they don't contain any details with respect to this system. It just says storm sewer system. So the one drainage, basically we came up with a stormwater management, or nowadays it's called rainwater management system. And it complies with the similar type systems that the provincial government has been promoting since 2002. Now, the specialists that were retained, as McElhaney Engineering, had their specialists prepare the stormwater management plan, have reviewed it several times, and say that it's going to work fine the way it's designed right at present time. They have done numerous systems in BC, the similar type systems, and there are more municipalities every year requesting these types of systems as opposed to the traditional underground storm sewer system. One of the things that I should point out is in the OCP that was passed on or adopted by bylaw on June 25th, 2019, it refers to developing rainwater management systems as opposed to the traditional storm sewer systems in order to protect ecosystems. Now, this system we're proposing is basically does that. Now, particular section 4.6 in the OCP states that they want to achieve a water balance rainwater management regime. So basically our system complies with the OCP. And it will maintain the health of the ecosystems, the wetlands, and the streams. Now, if you go to a complete underground storm sewer system, you take all the water away, right? The water is directed into an underground system. It is taken away from the wetlands within our property and basically channeled underground. And there's no opportunity for that runoff to be cleaned or anything. Basically, whatever dust or contaminants or whatever is on the road runs into an underground system and then is dumped further downstream into the lake. This system, basically what we're proposing is that we use the wetlands and the streams and whatever to handle or to manage the rainwater. and let the streams and the wetlands and whatever have an opportunity to clean the rainwater before it enters Cowichan Lake. Basically, this recent requirement is putting a huge onus and burden on BV developments, because basically, like I said, the construction is already 70% complete. We've had our engineers look at it and do a cost estimate for putting in a complete stormwater sewer system at this point in time. And they came back with an estimate of approximately $700,000. Now, this is due to the fact that sewer and water infrastructure has all been installed, including services. So now we'll have to go back in and remove and replace sewer and water infrastructure in order to get the storm sewer system in place. Now, just for the sake of completeness, I did look at the case law, and one case was directly on point, and that's the recent case between Vancouver Island Motorsports and the municipality of North Cowichan. Now, this case involved basically the developer had a two-phase development. When they started phase one, the municipality told them that the zoning was appropriate and would allow their phase two development. In 2019, the council changed their mind and said the zoning would no longer permit the development of phase two. Now, they went to Vancouver Island Motorsports, went to the BC Supreme Court, and basically in that case, Madam Justice McDonald of the Supreme Court quashed the decision of the municipality. And basically because, and she went through a bunch of case law, but one of the best, the earlier cases she referred to, it stated a decision maker cannot deviate from earlier decisions or from a long-standing past practice, especially when it is too late for those affected by these decisions to adjust their behavior accordingly. The time to discuss design changes and whatever was when the design was being reviewed. At that point in time, the design changes are a lot easier to make. Basically, we could have tendered it out as a complete package and everything would have been installed. To come back when a project is 70% complete and say now put in a storm sewer system is very onerous, very unreasonable, and very unfair. It's very expensive.
Okay. Have you got much more to say, Mr. Locker?
It's the only other option we've got right now is to register this property as a strata title. Under that registration, Section 506(3) of the Municipal Government Act, or the Local Government Act, pardon me, states that the municipality cannot place any requirements on the developers with regards to the types of services within the strata title area.
Okay. Okay, so we have a report here prepared by our planner that before, we go down that road, we should probably hear from him because that's not included in our report that we're considering here tonight. So, so we'll move on to Mr. Van Hemert now for a description on his report. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Day, I will be brief. The report itself, for the most part, provides a background of chronology, which I trust everybody's been able to see, beginning with the rezoning of the property, the development variance permit, which was requested and granted regarding the height of retaining walls. And then also some history on the subdivision, the preliminary lot layout approval, and also the construction permit and all the whole timeline and the conditions on the construction permit. And I also included a map for your reference of the actual subdivision layout. So if we need to refer to any of the streets, they're in there, road A, B, C, and D. So if anybody does need to refer to that. I think perhaps the most important point that I make in this report from a planning, well, there's several, but one of the important points is to identify that the stormwater management plan that was in the hands of the town, the engineer, the planner, the CAO, the one I reference, specifically speaks to an in-ground pipe system as part of the overall rainwater management system. So it's important to understand that rainwater management isn't just pipes or no pipes. It's a combination of pipes in the ground or natural drainage courses, including the wetlands, of which there are 4 on the property, I believe. And the point I made in the staff report is that stormwater management plan, or the rainwater management plan, you can use these words really interchangeably, but the plan clearly referenced some extent within the development of a piped system. And I believe that that's really what the town was expecting, because that's what the report said. When I brought this to the attention of John Irving, the engineer on record, and this is not in the report because this is more recent at the time of publication of this report. At that time, he noted that he would update the report to show how it would look if we pulled all the pipes out. And I just want to emphasize to everybody, this information was not available to the town until after this report was published. Since this time, we have received an update to the stormwater management plan, which shows how the water on the smaller local streets would be taken care of through a series of ditches. So these are not the primary ditches between the wetlands, but these would be open ditches along all the cul-de-sacs of the project. And so we have since received those drawings from the engineer, and I would defer to any further question on the nature of that to our Superintendent of Public Works. But I just want to draw that to your attention, that that's an important part of the town's expectations on how the stormwater management system would be achieved. As you can see, councillors and mayor, we have presented two options for council to consider. One is to deny the request outright. And the second, as you can see, is at the applicant's expense, the town at its sole discretion would undertake to hire a professional engineer to review all the work done to date. So a site visit, a review of the rainwater management plan. And then if there were to be any modifications based on that review, those would be the ones that would be undertaken. And so there you can see the 4 sub points to that option number 2. And so those are the 2 that staff have reviewed and that we are presenting forward to you. I think, so that basically is my very brief report and a further explanation of the staff report.
All right, I'd like to go to the Superintendent of Public Works, but he's not in his chair, so we'll go to Councilor McGonigal first with a question.
He's there.
Councilor
There he is.
McGonigal.
I just want to clarify something here. I'm confused as to why this is coming to council. For one thing, we are the body for rezoning, for densification, and we have done our due diligence in those 2 courses. And the subdivision portion, the rainwater management, and everything resides within the bylaw should reside within the approving officer, the planner, and the superintendent. We have approved the official community plan. We have approved the subdivision bylaw with those amendments of stormwater management. And I think that's where our duties reside. Further from that should reside within the professional staff that we hire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGonigal. Now I'm going to go to Mr. Fernandez here, and because I tend to agree with that comment that is this not something that the professional staff can just deal with and keep council out?
No, this is allowed under the Local Government Act. A variance application can be made to council because staff are holding it up, basically saying, no, you can't do this. And they're just looking for council to vary that requirement. So this is really in the hands of council now. You have a choice of saying no or yes, but these are the conditions you have to comply with. But on an issue that I want to raise with Mr. Locker is, he indicated that the town approved the construction drawings in March. I'd like to know who did that.
Mr. Locker? You need to unmute your mic, sir. Mr. Locker, thank you.
Basically, Mr. Fernandez, I remember talking to you when we were going to submit the final drawings and everything else, and you said that they were supposed to be submitted to the Superintendent of Public Works and Engineer.
Construction drawings, correct.
Was Mr. Camso, pardon me, who was a professional engineer, and that he would do the actual review and approval. He did the review and approval. We paid the appropriate fees and everything, and he issued the construction permit. And we started off on construction based upon that permit. And basically what we're stating now, it's completely unfair to come back when 70% of the construction is complete and say, okay, well, rip up the storm or rip up the sanitary sewer and the water main and put in the storm sewer system and then start. This makes this property like it's not worth developing, right? Like, I mean, it's going to cost $700,000 to do that. We haven't changed the plans one bit since they were reviewed. There was no storm sewer system, underground storm sewer system shown on the detailed design. And I say again, like, design will evolve from 0 to 100%, right? And the 100% are the ones that we submitted for approval. We did have discussions with Mr. So and during the course of things, and explained our rationale and everything, and he approved them and issued the construction permit. So at this stage now, we're in a position where, you know, we're already accruing construction delay claims because the contractor can't proceed any further. And then we're looking at a huge cost. If these matters were discussed at the time of the design was reviewed and negotiated at the time, the cost for doing the storm sewer system would have been significantly reduced.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Locker. So can I go to Mr. Fernandez here? Is the Superintendent of Public Works at any point in charge of approving design?
Generally speaking, he would run it by me in terms of how he's making changes as per the original drawings, which never happened.
Okay. I'd like to go to Mr. Sandhu now for his comments before we hopefully move along to considering the recommendations here. And I do understand now that because the variance was applied for, that council has a duty to do something here, and there's 2 recommendations, which might be obvious. Mr. Sandhu.
So I'll just, I got onto the project, it was well on its way. And so and I ended up finding these 50% review drawings and the stormwater management plan, as James talked about. In that, there was a complete storm system that went to every lot to pick up the water from every lot. And then when it was sent to tender, that was all removed. These lots do not have a storm water connection to them. So all your perimeter drains, all your roof water, it's got no place to go. In most lots, it's going to run out onto the streets. So, and what's going to happen there? Sidewalks are going to freeze. The roads are going to freeze in the winter. It's a liability to the town. Then all these ditches, again, it's a huge maintenance to the town. Yes, it might cost BV Developments a little bit of money right now, but 5, 10 years, 20 years down the road, who's going to be maintaining these? It's the taxpayers of Lake Cowichan that it's going to cost money to. It's a huge maintenance nightmare. So, and when Brian was talking about using the wetlands, we're not saying not to use the wetlands. Most of the water is going to the wetlands. Even you can go in and out of the wetlands coming down Point Ideal Road. You can put it into the wetland and then pick it up lower again. all the big wetlands are being used. They're not, then they're dumping out. So I don't understand where that's coming from.
Okay, so thank you very much. I want to thank Mr. Locker for being here tonight to present the BB developments comments, and I want to thank our planner for producing this report. We're getting into areas now where council has no business being when it comes to design and this and that. Based on what we've heard here tonight and what's contained in this report, we have two recommendations in front of us. And I'm asking for a mover of one of those recommendations. And I don't see any hands. Councilor McGonigal.
Well, given James Van Hemert's comments earlier about recent information, I'm not comfortable making the decision without that information being in the report. I would not be comfortable with either denying or going with option 2 without at least knowing what impact that would have on the proponent's design within what you have stated, Mr. Van Hemert. So personally, I would like to see that information before any decision is made. And again, I will say that I know it's a variance, but we have done our due diligence by the rezoning and the densification within this, which is where we should reside. Not looking into the complex issues of stormwater management, which already resides within the subdivision bylaw, etc. We're not engineers. We're not hydrologists. So I'm not comfortable with that either.
Okay, and I didn't see any other hands moving up here, so I'm going to refer.
So I'm going to refer this to
Thank
Finance and Admin for an updated report on the information that Mr. Van Hemert has shared tonight and how that would impact the two options that have been put before us tonight. So I would refer that to Finance and Admin meeting, please.
Thank you. Now, do we need a motion to refer that?
Just on the propriety of referral, whether it should be referred or not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So the motion on the propriety to refer to the next Finance Admin meeting with the all-inclusive information that Mr. Van Hemert presented tonight that is not on his report. Seconded by Councillor Austin. Any further discussion on this item tonight? Councillor Vomaka.
Is there a possibility when this does come back that we can have a staff report from our superintendent?
We'll leave that for staff to figure out, and all the information that we'll need will be on that report.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the referral? Thank you. Opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for staying behind and joining us tonight to help us move along on this.
Thank you, Mr. Locker.
Thank you. Okay, folks. Thank you very much for moving that along. Let's go to number 9, bylaws. We have the Town of Lake Cowichan fees and charges for services bylaw number 1047/2021 may be reconsidered and adopted. Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, this is a bylaw that has been given 3 readings at the last regular meeting, and it basically reflects a couple of charges, one for the Lakeview Park and a charge for the outside fire protection charges.
Moved by Councillor Austin, second by Councillor Sandu. Any more discussion on that? Motion to adopt bylaw number 1047/2021. No, Councillor Austin.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. All right. All those in favor then?
To voting.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. You got ahead of me there. That's all right. Okay, so that can move us along to B, Town of Lake Cowichan sewer regulations and rates bylaw number 1048/2021 may be reconsidered and adopted.
again, this bylaw was given first 3 readings at the last meeting, and it basically reflects something that was omitted in the last go around, which was the outside sewer charges.
Okay, thank you very much. That was moved by Councillor Sandhu, seconded by Councillor McGonigal. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that motion's carried as well. Then we can move along to the Town of Lake Cowichan zoning amendment. Bylaw number 1049, 2021 may be read a first and second time.
Yes, indeed. This is as a result of an application from the owners who wanted to be able to put their homes on smaller lots, so the setbacks could be met. The normal size R1 lots would require a larger setback, so he is looking at putting homes on what are not normally smaller lots. So it's here for first and second, and it will go to a public hearing at the next council meeting.
Councillor McGonigal is moving, Councillor Sandhu seconded. Any discussion on that bylaw? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. That'll move us along to D, Town of Lake Cowichan Property Maintenance and Prohibition of Unsightly Premises Bylaw, number 1050, 2021, may be read a first, second, and third time.
Your worship, this bylaw may be given only 2 readings if you so desire, the first and second. If you want to make additional changes, or give it 3 readings all at once at this meeting. It's as a result of council wanting to see some teeth in our bylaws to enforce the unsightly premises.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fernandez. You all heard Mr. Fernandez's comments. We could only go to second reading if you like, if you have any additions or amendments you'd like to make this evening.
I'll move 3 for second and third, please.
All right, second by Councillor Austin. Thank you very much. Any more discussion? Councillor McGonigal.
I think this has been in the works for quite some time, whether it be called property maintenance or nuisance bylaw. And I thank staff for all their hard work on this and looking at other jurisdictions who have similar bylaws. What it will do is afford us an opportunity to have another tool in the toolbox to accommodate these properties that are nuisance and become problematic to neighborhoods and the betterment of the community. So I just want to say that we have had input through the whole discussion on various portions within that bylaw. So to hold it up in just 2 readings tonight, I don't think would be appropriate. The faster we move it through the system, the better our toolbox is stacked.
All right. Got the message. Town Lake Cowichan, maybe property maintenance and prohibition unsightly premises bylaw. First, second, and third reading moved by Councillor McGonigal, seconded by Councillor Austin, sorry. No further comments? Councillor Romaka?
Thank you. I'm happy with the bylaw, but what I would like council to consider is when you talk about teeth in the bylaw, and I think we need to address our bylaw enforcement and our ability to be able to give fines. I don't know whether I could explain that any clearer.
Well, point taken, and that might not be the topic for the bylaw, but we can definitely put that into a future discussion.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any more hands? I'll call the question. All those in favor of 3 readings and opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried. Thank you very much. That'll move us along to Town Lake Cowichan zoning amendment bylaw number 1051, 2021 may be read a first and second time. Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, this is as a result of council wanting to allow backyard hens in the town of Lake Cowichan. So we've had to amend the zoning bylaw to allow that. And some terms and conditions are laid out there, and it's here for first and second reading. And this will also go to a public hearing process.
Moved by Councilor McGonigal, seconded by Councilor Sandu. I do have a possible amendment, if I may present that to you. I would like to amend section 4.22, bullet 3, item A to read: within 30 meters of the natural boundary of the Cowichan River and Cowichan Lake. Reason for that being that I think it's important that the lake can be included as a body of water as well that would not benefit from pollution from backyard hen droppings. So, Mr. Fernandez?
Yeah, we can do that at third reading when it comes at the next meeting,
Okay,
because you're only giving it first and second reading here.
okay, thank you. Sorry about that. But I just, either way, I wanted to put that out there. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to first and second reading. Councilor Vomaka.
Thank you. I was reading through it and I was wondering, I thought at the table we had discussed that there would also be something regarding no slaughtering on premises. And there's nothing in the bylaw here.
Okay, can we hold that for third reading as well then? And staff make a note of that?
I take a note of it, yes.
Thank you.
And we can discuss those two items when we get there. Thank you, Councilor Vomaka. So we're looking for first and second reading of 1051-2021. Town of Lake Cowichan zoning bylaw. Moved by Councilor Gonal, second. No, we already seconded, right? Councilor Vomaka, yes. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. So that moves along to F, Town of Lake Cowichan Animal Control Amendment Bylaw 1052-2021, may be read first, second, and a third time.
And again, this bylaw has to be amended because of the issue of backyard hens, and some definitions have to be changed, and also the regulations regarding the keeping of hens. So it's here for first and second and third reading.
So just to be clear, we're moving this to third tonight?
If you
Not
want
stopping
to.
it. So it still leaves it open to add future items at a future
Yeah,
date
if you don't,
from the
just
last
do one
bylaw.
and two. Yeah.
Just do 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Well, I would like to recommend that we only move first and second then.
I'll second it.
Well, you're going to move it and we'll let somebody second
And
it.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And given some of the previous discussion, that could be added to this one as well.
So thank you very much. Any more discussion on that one? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries as well. Thank you very much. Okay, now we can move along to item 10, new business. Union of BC Municipalities, RCB Contract Committee welcomes nominations. I asked for that to be on this agenda because I found it on the UBCM email, the Compass, I believe it's called, and noticed that. And there is a opportunity for nominations for a member of council for communities under 5,000. Wondering if there's any interest at this table, in which case we council would have to recommend a person and they would have to fill out an application. So, Councilor McGonigal.
I would most certainly be interested in going through this process if no one else is. I know I'm not the only person in a community under 5,000, but I'd be interested in this process.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thanks for stepping forward there. And I thought it was important that we have this because, you know, as we get closer to 5,000, it might be valuable to have a representation there. So a motion to yeah, how am I going to word that? Motion to put Councilor McGonigal's name forward for nomination to the RCMP contract committee. Moved by Councilor Sandu, seconded by Councilor Austin. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Councilor McGonigal, for
Thank
stepping
you.
forward for that.
Let's see what that entails.
Yeah.
Probably a criminal record check.
Yeah.
Good thing. I did
So-
pass my last one.
So I guess we'll leave it to staff to find the application and get that out. I think it's happening pretty quick too. Anyways.
March 12th.
Yeah. All right. So that'll move us along to the mayor's report, and just going to step outside the box. And this is not a response to a recent suggestion that we have a time card, but I thought it was important for myself to report on a few things that I've been invited to attend on behalf of the council. And so I'm going to give you the dates and just maybe a sentence on each of the items. So I'm a member of the Weir Project Advisory Committee. I believe I assumed that position from the previous mayor. That committee has Tom Rutherford, Melissa Tokarek, Graham Kissick from Paper Excellence, Kate Miller from Cbrd, and Leroy Van Weeren. I attended a Zoom session on that January 27th, where they just talk about, and believe me, I provide no input. This is full of experts. The Weir design is 90% complete, and the cost estimates are currently sitting at the 60% accuracy level. They have done some work to look at the lock and the spill gates and done some core samples, and have found out the concrete and the rebar contained in those structures are almost as good as new. And they're going to do a little bit further research to find out whether they can keep those two structures intact and just apply minor upgrades. And they feel that the study performed on that will save the $700,000 in the final costing out of the project. So an interesting group, and it's interesting watch for those of the public and council. Just remember there's a Cowichan Lake Weir website where you can see constant upgrades of the Weir design and blogs from the folks involved there. On January 28th, I attended with Councillor Sandu the Circular Economy Zoom virtual lunch and learn, where we learned that 8.6% of the possible recyclable items are only recycled, and that they found out that it's well over $1 trillion opportunity if we in fact to create an economy of recycling things like sweaters and all the plastic goods that are currently not recycled and just taken to the landfill. So that was a very interesting lunch and learn. Then on January 28th, virtually, I attended the mayor and chair's COVID-19 update from provincial government with Minister Josie Osborne providing on the telephone call, where she gives monthly updates on the status of grants and anything to do with COVID-19 that would inform us better in small communities, and it presented the vaccine rollout plan. And they feel that there's going to be clinics in 172 communities across the province when we get in full swing. The Cbrd grants, that's COVID economic response. Forget the last two words on that. Announcements will be in February, and we were informed at this week's meeting, which happened on Monday, that those announcements would be finished by the end of this week. After the minister gives her updates, every chair and mayor is allowed to leave a comment, and most times it's a common theme within these meetings. And one of the more common ones was unauthorized camping in the upcoming tourism season around the island. So just bring you back, these are just mayors and chairs on Vancouver Island, so in our region. So in which case I interjected concerns for the same, and possible guidance that the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs could give us on managing our upcoming tourism season. And many other communities shared that same concern about that. On January 29th, I attended the Cowichan Leadership Group, which is the mayors and chairs of elected bodies throughout the Cowichan region, which includes the school district. And on that meeting, Dr. Shannon Waters just gave a summary of the COVID-19 issues in the area at that time. The Cowichan tribes conversation and was very loud and clear in the discrimination that was going on social media there. So that took up the whole conversation, at which time they said they would distribute some updates to the attendees at the meeting on how to message out to community if there are any questions arising around COVID-19. They asked us not to share that around too much, but I will probably produce you a highlight of what's contained in that document. There's no top secrets there. It's there if we need it. So the next meeting was January 29th. Councillor Austin and I are members of the Poverty Reduction Strategy Working Group. And that group has been working very hard, a lot of great input from community members. And Social Planning Cowichan Rosalie Sorry is guiding us through that process. And as you know, I forwarded out the what was 99% complete the rollout of what you're going to see on social media and the website and the likes of that for you. That is rolled out today, and very interesting. And looking forward to sharing that around. And if you could as well, to try and get as much community engagement out of this as possible. And Councillor Austin, I will ask you to say some words on that at the end of my report, just in case you want to add some more interesting facts. Councillor Sandhu and I attended the LGLA conference February 3rd and 4th, very interesting conference for which we already gave you our reports. Still processing a lot of the information we received from that. On February 5th, I attended the iced tea orientation. It was a position that former Mayor Peters held as a RAC committee member. So there was 3 of us in the orientation. And our first official meeting is March 5th, where we sit. And I don't know what's on the agenda yet, but I'm looking forward to playing a role there. And then we had a follow-up Poverty Reduction Committee meeting on February 12th as well, which also led to the rollout of all the information I sent to you via email, and the public will see very shortly. And then February 22nd, as I mentioned, another regional call from Minister Josie Osborne and also Minister Malcolmson from the Mental Health and Addictions Ministry. And that consumed the whole conversation, and the roundtable was refined to just those topics. And the question asked was, what is the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions? What action items are performing well in our communities? So various opinions from all the mayors on the island and chairs. The topic or the comment I added to the comment was that it would be very good if we could see outreach into smaller communities away from the core, so that those services could be provided and people wouldn't have to leave the community which they reside because they are residents too. And that we have an agency here that could possibly play a role in that, because it's not fair, and you'll hear it from many mayors and larger cores that most of these people with these issues end up in the core, and the core ends up having to deal with it. So just put that in mind if there's better collaboration between all the funding opportunities that seem to be pouring out to handle this issue during COVID. So, and that was a common theme shared with most of the mayors and chairs as well, is that they're not seeing the same services that they're getting in the core, and rightly so, because of the masses of people with those problems that relocate there. But we could definitely use some services on the outside. So that is what I've been up to in my spare time, between organizing new flooring for my home And just in closing, I would like to thank council for all the extra time and energy, and I know that you all put it in to your position. So I just wanted to make sure that you're thanked for that. And I would also like to thank staff, and this was brought forward from one of the meetings, one of the other mayors brought it up, and I thought for a second, right on. Just want to thank staff and all departments for their dedication to the success of our community and the care and respect they put into executing our bylaws and policies, and in the end, maintain and improve our daily lives as residents, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So if the staff could please pass that on to the people in the organization as well, that we're very grateful that they've kept on going and helping us move along as a community. So thank you very much, everybody. Any questions, Councillor Austin?
Just one thing, with the poverty reduction, I'm supposed to be meeting with the school board and some of the teachers sometime soon. They have tried to organize that to see if they want to be involved. And I want to remind everybody, it's Pink Shirt Day tomorrow. So wear your pink shirt. It's Anti-Bullying Day. Thank you. Be kind.
I went to try mine on and it didn't fit.
I have to buy a new one. I bought one today. I bought a new one for my exercise class.
Just going back to the poverty reduction strategy for a moment, the Rosalie from Social Planning Cowichan would like to get to see council as a delegation, just to give them an update and probably show them more of the details of what's going to happen.
Right.
So we're better equipped to answer questions in community. So try to get her in on maybe sustainable planning or something like that, but we'll work that out at agenda planning.
Oh, right, Monday.
Okay. So that moves us along then to notices of motion. Does anybody have anything there? I'm just going to put out the notion of, for discussion at a future meeting, of the possibility of creating a select committee on housing and or a select committee on tourism as well. So just wanted to put that out there for your consideration, and we can discuss these things at a future agenda to see if there's an interest. Okay. Anybody else? That'll move us to question period. So we'll pause for 3 minutes. And of course, don't go too far in case we get a telephone question. Once again, for the public, 250-749-6681 is the phone number you can call to ask questions, and you'll be heard live on our Zoom. And you can expect answers. And also you can email your questions to general@lakecowichan.ca. That's once again, 250-749-6681 is the phone number, or email to general@lakecowichan.ca. So we will hang tough here for 3 minutes and see if we get any questions. Okay. Didn't see the telephone ringing, so
No telephone, no email.
no emails. Okay. Well, that puts an end to question period then. Then the next item on the agenda is in camera. Mr. Fernandez, could you introduce the reasons for going in camera this evening?
I can indeed. Section 92 of the community charter requires that before a meeting or part of a meeting is to be closed to the public, it needs to state why, by resolution, why the meeting is to be closed. And the basis on which the meeting is to be closed falls under the following sections of the community charter. Section 91C, labor relations. Section 91F, law enforcement. Actually should be legal matters. I think, sorry, I got the wrong section, but it's on legal matters. And section 91K, negotiations relating to the pursuit of municipal service.
Looking for a motion to go in camera, please. Moved by Councillor Sandhu, seconded by Councillor Austin. All those in favor? Opposed? Before we all disappear, motion's carried. Are you going to send out another quick invite?
I will indeed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good night.
See you all shortly.